Hey guys, you ready for some more burned and battered murder trial? I hate this defense attorney so much. Well, not the man himself, but you know what I mean. um, he doesn't play nice with others. And this expert, I don't think the expert's the bad part. I think it's the way he's presenting this expert. It's like, I don't know, like the guy was just up there telling anecdotes yesterday, and like he didn't even tell his training or credentials or anything, and it's like that's how you start with an expert. It's like, what is your training? No, he just starts telling stories. Okay, let's see what's gonna happen today. Oh, dang it, share your screen, Debbie. I've been doing this long enough, I should remember to do that first thing. I am getting better though. No. uh why does it do that? Why do I have a black screen? Stop!
It's the number 75% by excavator.
What? I have it ready to go, and then it just does whatever it wants to do.
Okay, we're back on the record. Counsel, I think we're still awaiting one juror. Was there a matter to address before the
Hey, Judy.
jury, Mr. Kelly?
No, I think
We're good? Okay.
You just like the masturbated.
Just say it.
Anybody want a cat? She needs one of those translators, like Doug from Up. She just keeps coming over here and going meow. I don't know what she wants. It's meow, and then she walks away. This is the third time she's done it.
Yeah. I think you just forgot.
I think my husband will be upset if I gave her away. He says he doesn't like cats, but
So,
really does love her.
so counsel on the sweatpant instruction, is this the final, the one you sent, Jay?
Yep, Wolf and I wrote that together.
You sure it's only 2 sentences?
It took us 10 minutes to fashion it.
Okay, the sweatpants you'll see in the video are not the same pair of sweatpants involved in this case. They are an exemplar pair of 100% polyester sweatpants.
Oh yeah, they're sweet.
That's it? Okay.
They're very.
And you'll alert me when it's time to give that instruction, Mr. Mueller or Mr. Blair?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He was so funny last night. He paused the video. He's got his hand like this. She's licking his hand. And he goes, y'all, I've come to this point in my life where all I am is a salt lick.
Okay, we'll bring in the jury then. I think you had your witness on the stand.
Thank you. I'm recalling Robert Trinkle.
Morning. Sir, before you have a seat, I'll let you put your bag down, but before you have a seat, I'll swear you in again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And Mr. Mueller, you may continue.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
One more thing.
What is the witness placing all over the bench? I see a bunch of binders coming out. What are those?
They have information, Mr. Leroy's photographs, things of that nature to refer to when I testify.
I would prefer, well, if they're going to be, are they even exhibits? I mean, we need to rely on either what's been admitted or.
Your Honor,
I understand that. I'm just kind of throwing that out there so we're all in.
Back.
You could, sir,
you
you
can
can
keep
leave them out for now. We'll deal with it. If there's issues along the way, we'll deal with them as they come up.
Thank you. May I begin? Thank you. Mr. Trinkle, yesterday we were talking about the scientific method at the end of the day. You remember that?
Yes.
And the steps you have to follow
Yeah.
and the consequences of if you don't follow those steps. You remember that?
This man is stuck in high school
There's
biology.
something that Mr. Leroy had testified to regarding a book called NFPA 921. Can you tell us what that is and what significance that book, that guide has in the fire origin and cause industry?
NFPA 921 is listed as a guide for fire and explosion investigations on the front cover. It was first printed in 1992. The most current printed is 2024. And it's a book that assists in how procedures in fire investigation, many of the other variables but that relate to and the periphery of fire investigation and direct fire investigation.
In kind of a nutshell, does it give you the do's and don'ts of when you're doing a fire investigation?
That would be a good way of putting it. Yes.
Is that something that you've been trained on and fire investigators are trained on in the course of their careers?
Since 1992, I used that book as one of my texts when I taught in college level at Down University, a basic and advanced class. I used that book in Kirk's Fire Investigations as supplement.
Is NFPA 921 considered in the industry kind of the golden standard of the guidebook of how you train?
Yes, on the front of the book, it says it's a ANSI approved document. It used to say it's an ANSI standard, American National Standards Institute standard, but a standard has to be in the form of shall, will, and must. It's codes when I enforce codes in the fire inspection and fire department in Detroit, all the codes had to be met specifically. This can't be met specifically because there's too many other materials to cover, but NFPA 1033 is a standard, and it refers to this book as the book to follow.
Okay. I want to, as we now talk about your role in this case and what you did, I want to introduce subject matters and you tell me if NFPA 921 guide you in those areas. I first want to talk about Mr. Leroy's excavation. Does NFPA 921 provide guidance in the importance of excavation?
Yes, it does.
Let me show you something. Is this a section 18.3.2.3 that discusses excavation and its importance?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I guess, are we admitting these as an exhibit?
No.
Since we're displaying them to the jury, or what?
Again, under 707, it's a learned treatise that Mr. Leroy talked about, and it's used for impeachment of Mr. Leroy because it gives the guidelines that he didn't follow. Thank you. It's not going back as an exhibit. So let's talk about what this section says. Oops.
That man loves his iPad.
One of these times it's a new pen.
I bought an iPad pen. You guys know how much I love Temu. And I usually don't have problems. But I bought an iPad pen from Temu because I wasn't going to pay $30 for an iPad pen. Guess what? It doesn't work. That's one of the few things I've gotten from Temu that doesn't work. It was like $5. I was like, oh, cool.
Adequate debris removal is essential for a thorough fire investigation. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Why?
Why? Because if you don't do adequate debris removal, there's no way you can articulate the exact cause of the fire without clearing everything and making sure there isn't something else that you didn't uncover that could have been a cause.
Okay. Next part says, one of these times, there we go. Inadequate removal of debris and the resultant exposure of limited portions of fire patterns and other evidence may lead to an incorrect analysis. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
That is everybody taught that?
Yes.
That would include Mr. Leroy.
I don't know what training he actually has. He should have had it, yes.
Okay. And then finally, a fire scene investigation normally involves dirty and strenuous work. Acceptance of this fact is essential in conducting a proper fire investigation. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay. You saw what Mr. Leroy said about how he excavated and his attempt to collect data.
Yes.
Does NFPA 921 speak to that?
Yes.
It says may lead to an inadequate analysis. Not that it will.
All the large print.
Avoiding presumption. Does NFPA, when we talk about avoiding, what happened? When we talk about avoiding
You're
presumption,
operating it. That's what happened.
hypothesis can be
Correct.
because how does that tie into the scientific method?
Well, scientific method says that you have to collect data, analyze the data, test your data, and formulate hypotheses. If you don't have all the data, how can you possibly do that?
In the second section, all hypotheses should be subject to rigorous testing through the scientific method. What do you understand to be rigorous testing?
Rigorous testing is, if you can, try to recreate what you believe happened and do it with physical evidence, deductive reasoning, recreate. So sometimes you can't, for sure. But if there's something that you can do, you want to make sure that you do everything you can to establish that it is right or wrong. You try to disprove whatever you believed it to happen. If you can't disprove that, and you have all these other potential hypotheses, if you can disprove, you can eliminate many of them and only have one you can't disprove, then you actually have a cause. But if you have more than one, you can't.
You heard Mr. Leroy testify. You sat in on his testimony, right?
I did.
And you've actually read his transcript from his testimony.
I did.
You heard him say you're trying to prove and disprove a hypothesis. Do you agree with that?
No.
Why not?
Well, simply because how can you prove and disprove to start with? You can't do both. If you do both in the same particular scenario, you're trying to collect data and analyze and come to a hypothesis. The idea is if you can't disprove it, then that must be a valid hypothesis.
And NFPA 921 speaks to whether trying to disprove or prove in the scientific method.
I think that's what he meant when he said,
Is this the second? 6.4? When testing a hypothesis, the investigator should attempt to disprove rather than confirm the hypothesis.
That's correct.
And as we were talking about documentation and the importance of documentation, does NFPA 921 speak to that?
It does.
16.1.2,
Yes.
thorough and accurate documentation of the investigation is critical because compilation of factual data is necessary to support and verify investigative opinions and conclusions. How does that affect you in your role? You come in 15 years after a fire inspection, the evidence isn't there, the house isn't there anymore. What's the importance of documentation to you?
Well, it also says in NFPA 921 that when you conduct a fire scene investigation, you have to be able to preserve that investigation, whether you call somebody in before you do any movement and have that other person come in and look at it with you, or you photograph, videograph, diagram, and preserve it as you went along. Like, for example, to do the excavation of debris. You don't just take one picture before you move it and then one picture after. It's an archaeological dig, and you need to document and preserve every aspect of that. Every piece of evidence you find, whether it's of value or not, you have to record it so somebody else can take that same information and they evaluate it.
Okay. Now let's talk about what Mr. Leroy saw at his inspection. Do you recall, this is photograph 62 from Mr. Leroy's photographs. This is what would have been the basement that he said the first floor dropped into.
Yes.
Okay. And can you see the remnants of a basement
the guy's-
fireplace?
I'm going to grab the pictures that correspond to that. I'm sorry for having to do this, but my eyesight's pretty good. But what I see in this picture is the some of the flue vents for the chimney chases.
That would be
I think
this.
yes, and I think that is the fireplace right behind it.
And right here where I'm pointing, would that be the fireplace?
That's the fireplace for the basement.
In the
yes.
basement.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the 2 feet of rubble he was talking about throughout. Do you remember how big he said the living room was?
Yes.
About the size of this whole area of the courtroom.
Yes. I was at the scene, but there was nothing there. You know, I went there years later, so I know the dimensions, and I couldn't pinpoint obviously where a living room or any other rooms were, but I agree with that. That's approximately what it was, and we had diagrams to show that too.
Okay. And then you've seen Mr. McHugh's photographs that we showed.
I did.
I'm going to show you. What Mr. McHugh had said was the amount of excavation that or documents of the living room. Again, that's all the rubble that was down there.
Yes.
Did you have any, do you remember when Mr. McHugh got there?
He was there on a day or so after the fire, I believe.
2
10th,
days.
maybe 11th.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's on his pictures.
And
He
you
was there
saw
twice.
Mr. Shinsky's photographs, correct?
Yes,
That would be the rear of the house after Mr. Leroy had been there
yes,
and told us that he excavated a big pile that was 7 feet high. You remember that?
yes.
Okay. This is Mr. Shinsky's photograph. Did that play a factor into whether or not Mr. Leroy actually did what he said he did?
Well, it certainly confirmed he didn't. There was debris that he removed. He removed, obviously, the vent pipes that were central to that area, that space. And he also moved remnants of furniture, springs, and some debris. But even after that, yes, that's some of the, I think there's a vent, or the cap, and a few other things from one of the flues. There were triple flue there. There was one for the furnace, one each for the fireplaces. So
Okay.
there was a lot of piping here, and he removed some of it. But there are photographs that show after that there was still a bunch of debris, or that pictures that he even took himself to show there was a pile of debris still there.
I want to discuss in his photographs.
I did.
Does it comport more with what 921 calls for in terms of how you actually excavate something?
Yes.
All right, let me, if I can, Your Honor, we've admitted as Exhibit I the photographs of Mr. Shinsky. I'd just like to publish them as we go along.
Do you have those on your iPad?
I know I brought enough for the whole class last week. I hope I have enough for the whole class this week.
Your Honor, can we stop the commentary?
Let me share. This first photograph, what does this depict to you compared to what it would have been when Mr. Leroy left the place?
Well, this one certainly shows that they had an excavator or some mechanical equipment to help. But they take the walls down, and you can see the remains were. How sometimes they call it, if you just do it on a piece of paper, a blowout diagram. You put the walls on each side where you could, what's remaining, and you mark those as, wall north, south, and west, and east, and then show what's on the interior. It's for safety. It's for safety.
Let's talk about the second photograph. Does that show more of Mr. Shinsky and what he was doing in terms of taking the walls down?
Yes, it's a closer view, and now you see people inside where they now can feel safe. There's something not going to fall on them.
Do you see this back area? We'll talk about it more on other pictures. You see that back area that's cleared out?
Yes.
Does that correspond to where the bay window would have been?
From this angle, that's pretty much the best you can get. But yes, it's in the northwest corner of that room that you circled. That's probably better. Yes.
Okay. And this is just more of an excavation as it's supposed to be done?
Yes. There's still debris on the floor within that room that Mr. Leroy is supposed to have.
I'm on
excavated.
photograph number 5 and they're Bates numbered.
You interrupted your witness.
We can see this excavator up at the top.
Yes,
Is an excavator appropriate for an excavation?
yes, there's a variety of ways that you've got to be careful about using them, but absolutely.
That was an awkward question.
As you look at the photograph on 5, can you see this man who's on the right over here?
I do.
All right, the area behind him, would that represent the living room?
Yes,
From the
that's the
basement?
area, that's the area that we're speaking of, that's in the darker color.
All right, so the bay window that's at the bottom would have already been knocked out by the excavators.
Yes,
So this represents the rubble on the first floor, which would have been the living room as it fell into the basement.
yes.
All right. And do you remember what Mr. Leroy said about how he cleared out the basement?
He said, he said he did it, but obviously he didn't.
Photograph 10 is just a photograph of what?
That's the electrical distribution panel that's obviously been involved in a fire with wires down below it that are bare copper conductors that have burned off.
Is that something you have to consider? We'll talk about it more in detail, but is that something you have to consider in terms of trying to find out what happened in the fire? What caused the fire?
Your Honor, can we approach?
Who is the guy sitting next to Linda? I haven't seen him before. We can. Oh well, never mind. I was gonna say we can skip this. I forgot we're behind half hour at least.
I then want to talk to you about some of the photographs. This is 13 from Mr. Shinsky's photographs of the 15th. What does that show you?
That shows some of the debris that was removed, more than likely 75% by excavator.
75% by excavator. I don't think he's capable of saying that, Your Honor.
These are heavy pieces of
Dude.
evidence. A human being couldn't do it. He's been on thousands of excavations. Thousands. Thank you.
And others were moved by hand, smaller objects.
Yeah.
But in a placement such as they can look at them and define where they may have been and try to see what they may or may not have to do with the relationship of fire cause, or not only fire cause, but fire load.
More evidence of what?
Examining pieces of the appliance here to look at it to see if it could be ascertained whether there were something to do with the cause or just affected by the fire.
And in terms of laying it out and looking at the pieces individually, what step to the scientific method does that go to?
That would be, finding the evidence and then looking at it. You're collecting the data, which is that's some of the data, and then you're analyzing that data by putting it out and checking to see if you can make a hypothesis about each and every one of these pieces of equipment.
Okay. This last picture, 17. What does this show you in terms of how one excavates and the proper way to do something?
There, the investigator is isolating, for example, in this case, the flue pipes, laying them out, and I won't say in order, laying them out and seeing if they can determine a potential order. But as I said, there's 3 chimney chases, and you try to match up oxidation, different things on the flue pipes to see if you can match them all up, but some were smashed as a result of the collapse of the building. And then you've got other appliances, again, furniture, that is examined and trying to determine what value they have, as I said, either cause, origin, or fire load.
In terms of fires, obviously every fire can be different. Big fires, small fires, dumpsters, whatever, right?
Right, they're all uniquely different, sometimes to a great degree and sometimes to a small degree.
Are there occasions or frequent occasions where the damage is just too much, where you have what's called a total burn?
Well, total burn is, like the word says, total, but a burn that is very extensive with collapse of floors, roofs, and all that is a very difficult investigation.
And why is that?
Because much of the items that have been consumed in the fire, much of it is because there is such a wide area that you can't even find the origin.
Does NFPA speak to that, NFPA 921?
It does.
I'll show you this section, 18.8. Is that what you're talking about?
That's the one I have right in front of me, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. What that document says is a conclusion of the origin investigation can be the identification of a volume of space too large to identify causal factors, or no practical boundaries can be established around the volume of the origin, right?
Correct.
All you folks are taught that.
Yes.
You tested things like that.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've taught it to firefighters.
Yes.
Okay. In this particular case, Mr. Leroy defines an area of origin, as we had talked about 20 feet by 20 feet. Is that, in your opinion, a reasonable area of origin?
It is not.
Why not?
Because as this section says in practical experience, the book talks about an area of origin and a point of origin. Sometimes you actually do have a point of origin, but most of the time you do have an area. But that area consists of a very much smaller diameter or perimeter.
Give us an example.
Fire starts in a living room. It consumes many of the contents in the living room, flashes over, but by examination of each piece of the evidence there, you can get down to maybe a sofa where somebody was carelessly smoking, or a lightweight electrical cord on the floor that may have been the cause of the fire. But you have to do that, as it says, painstakingly, hard and dirty.
Is there any sense of embarrassment if you say the area is too big, the damage is too much? I have to say it's undetermined where the fire started.
No.
Let's talk about the area of origin as one, the living room, and then two, you reviewed Mr. Leroy's work. Did he adequately consider alternate hypotheses in terms of the area of origin?
He did.
Why not?
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question.
Yes. Did he adequately consider anything else other than a living room?
He didn't adequately, but he did consider other hypotheses.
Okay. Did you, as you looked at the file, see other areas of plausible origins of the fire?
I do.
Give me an example of one.
The most
You guys hear
reasonable
that?
one is the fire in the chimney chase.
Unbelievable. He expected the guy to say no, but he said yes. So the next question was, why not? Listen to the answers, dude.
And we'll talk about that
Judge, I think we're talking about cause, not area of origin.
No, we're talking about the area of origin of a fire in the chimney chase.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Examination.
You have to get to a cause?
Yes,
Why?
because if you have the wrong origin, you couldn't possibly have the right cause.
Okay. In terms of analyzing the chimney chase, what did you look at?
Actually, Mr. Leroy's trial testimony in this case, where he said everything I would have said to say the chimney chase is the most probable cause or possible cause. I won't say that. He had information that he said exactly like I would have said to say this is something that we have to consider.
Okay. Did you look at, for example, photographs of how the fire was spreading from the in-car video?
Yes.
And witness statements?
Yes.
From the on-scene folks?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you one of the prosecution's photographs from the in-car video. And what does that describe to you in looking at the house?
That's the responding, and the fire is in the back of the house, burning in the upper portions, and the smoke's coming out from that back central section.
Okay. Do you remember witness statements saying they saw flames coming through the roof?
Yes.
Okay. Would that be consistent with the chimney chase fire?
Yes.
Did you also look at Mr. Leroy's pictures?
I did.
I'm going to show you a photograph, and you tell me if that helps give you evidence or data to consider in a chimney chase fire as another point of origin or area of origin.
Yes.
You tell me what we're looking at and where you want me to point.
If you can point toward the second or the first floor fireplace, which is almost dead central in the picture. Right
Here?
there. Yes.
I'll back that up. Go ahead.
Okay. The roof is collapsed behind there, behind the chimney, and there's almost nothing else left behind the fireplace where the chimney chase would be.
Tell us, what is a chimney chase?
Chimney chase is a facade that goes around the flue vents, and it's supposed to be a certain distance away from the flue vents. There's not supposed to be anything in direct contact, but that's what's directly behind that the chimney. In that opening where you've got the header and the vertical 2x4s, where Mr. Leroy said, well, that was proof that there was no fire in the fireplace. That really would have had nothing to do with it, because that is a protected area, and there would be no way that it wouldn't burn if everything else burned, except it was protected and it was insulated, and it was what held that fireplace in check. But I don't believe there was a fireplace fire. I believe if there was anything, it was in the chase, and nothing else above here except minuscule amount of rubble, and the chimney or the roof failed at that point, which is a good point of reference to find out where something happened.
What causes a chimney chase fire?
A variety of things. The flue vents now are circular. They're not just old brick and stuff like they used to be in then.
But you saw
ceramic.
the aluminum steel.
Yeah, stainless steel usually. Some are just plain old.
So what can cause a fire to happen in a chimney chase
All right, two
with the
things.
flue?
One would be having insulation directly in contact with it. I've had two fires, actually, one was one way and one was the other, just within a couple months apart, a couple of years ago. One, because they were putting blown-in insulation in the roof area, and they were supposed to protect the area with the chimney chase, and they didn't. So while they were doing the insulation, it fell into the chase and was in direct contact. So over time, the insulation materials caught on fire, which caught the chase on fire, which caused the house to burn. But it wasn't nearly as bad as this. I mean, it was very clear
Don't
that
tell
was the cause.
stories. Just tell.
The other cause was the result of these flue vents are 4 feet long or 3, whatever the distance is. I think usually 4 feet. Those look shorter to me in the picture, but they are connected. You twist and connect until you get up to the top, and you put a cap on the top of that.
And that's why it's laid out to analyze whether that could be a cause.
Yes,
But you have a lot of damage to those.
right. They're too damaged to be, like say, some were, the ones that Leroy took out, some of them were actually almost flattened. I think he even mentioned that in his report or in his testimony. And those you wouldn't be able to tell. But in the other instance, the chimney came down in whole. The whole thing was on the side of the house, and everything, what remains of the chase and the flue came down, so we were able to put it all together. And there was a gap where one was.
Objection, Your Honor. He's never held any of this evidence. He can't talk about putting things together. How is he testifying to this?
Your Honor, he's an expert who's done thousands of investigations, and including chimney fires, and he's talking about how you go about analyzing the evidence, the data. This is part of the scientific method.
But he's talking about, we put this together. He's never
You didn't
touched
say
any of
we.
this. How is he testifying?
I'll allow him to re-answer the question. I didn't hear
Yes.
what you heard, Mr. Blair, but
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mueller?
Now, I want to show you, Mr. Trinkle,
Yes,
I want to show you Mr. Leroy's photographs, his own photograph of what he took out of the house.
yes.
One, is this the piece that you're talking about that was flattened?
It may be, I'm sure there were more than one, but yeah.
And then does this look like how a proper excavation would lay out evidence?
No.
Why are you being stubborn?
So do you have an opinion of whether you can rule out a chimney fire, a chimney chase as being the area of origin?
Yes,
What is that opinion?
you cannot.
And what does that say in terms of Mr. Leroy's conclusions as far as your ability to have confidence in them?
You can't have any confidence in them, but I was amazed when I heard him say, and then it's in his, in the transcript, that he explained everything I just explained, basically, and how that could happen.
And then rule it out with what? Any analysis?
He said it wasn't low enough. I think, that might be misquoting, but it was up high, and he explained how the fire would travel upward in the chase from wherever the fault was. But he doesn't know where that fault was, nor do I.
If you had a chimney chase fire, could it explain a sudden burst of flame?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, the chimney chase is confined. It's burning what's inside, but it's eroding the OSB or whatever, siding they had on that chase. And it's going to eventually go to the other areas. That's where you see the whole house is burned down away in the backside of that where the chimney chase was.
Okay. Now let's talk about Mr. Leroy's opinions of causation, how the fire started. Does NFPA 921 give us guidance on that?
Yes.
I showed this to Mr. Leroy. The cause factors for a fire.
19.1.1.
Correct.
Okay.
The determination of a fire cause requires the identification of those factors that were necessary for the fire to have occurred. Those factors include the presence of a competent ignition source.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I think he can maybe ask the witness to talk about it, but he's literally testifying from the book.
I'm not testifying, I'm just reading what this says.
It
And I
is
apologize, I
getting
should
to
have
the
been black
point
on
of
that.
testimony, so perhaps rephrase the question.
Tell us what 3 factors are necessary, required to have a fire cause.
Certainly the competent ignition source, the type and fuel first ignited, and what brought them together.
Okay. Does it also speak, NFPA 921, as to whether or not you can get away with less than all 3?
It says you can't.
Cat.
19.4.4.1, does that speak to that?
Get it.
Yes.
Can you read that?
I can, particularly it's in front of me. Even though I don't need glasses yet, it helps.
Can you read that to us?
It says simply identifying a fuel or ignition source by itself does not and cannot describe how a fire came to be.
In other words, 1 and 2 by themselves don't count.
No,
Rat.
We're going to talk about how Mr. Leroy got to his open flame and gasoline issues, but do you remember him testifying about number 3, step 3,
yes,
and how he couldn't identify how the fire 1 and 2 got together?
I do recall that, yes.
Okay. So what does that mean in terms of being able to identify how the fire started the cause?
Means he can't, and he didn't.
What does that tell you in terms of your confidence in his opinion that he actually identified a cause of the fire?
Well, I guess if I put a percentage on it, it'd be 0.
Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's identification of the origin and being in the living room, but how he used Ms. Stermer's testimony to help solidify that basis. You remember him talking about that?
Yes.
Okay. What's the one thing that you found consistent in every one of Linda Stermer's statements?
She was downstairs, he was upstairs, or her husband was upstairs.
And then what happened?
She heard a sound, a scream, and ran from the basement upstairs and saw that the fire was in the living room.
Do you recall whether he agreed with me that you can't be in 2 places at one time?
He did.
And what does that tell us about Linda Stermer being in the place where Mr. Leroy thought the fire started at the time the fire started?
It would tell you that there's no way she could have been involved in setting a fire.
Objection, speculation, Your Honor.
Mr. Blair, could you please bring the emotion down? a bit?
Sorry.
Thank you.
That caught me off
You
guard.
have,
I
an
apologize.
yes, you have an objection, and what is your objection?
Speculating as to whether or not the defendant could have started the fire. You can't be.
He testifying that she wasn't in the same place as Todd Stermer when the fire started.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Do you recall Mr. Leroy agreeing with me you can't be in 2 places at one time?
Yes,
And that Mr. Stermer was by himself when he got caught on fire?
yes.
Let's do a hypothesis. Here's a hypothesis. Linda Stermer was upstairs with Todd Stermer when the fire started. Do you have evidence that would support that or disagree with that?
Evidence to support it.
You have evidence that Linda Stermer was in the basement.
Yes,
So you can rule out the hypothesis that she was upstairs when the fire started,
yes,
right? That's according to the data that you have, and that's the only consistent data you have, right?
yes.
Do you remember that Mr. Leroy found that evidence to be reliable?
I do recall he did.
In terms of alternate theories, alternate hypotheses, is that important that you have to consider different theories.
Absolutely important.
Why?
Who was that? That was so funny.
If you don't consider all of the other potential theories, then you can't come and render an opinion that there's one and only one reason for this fire to have occurred.
Let's talk about this idea of gasoline on the sweatpants. And first of all, why don't we do this? Let's talk about fire propagation. Can you tell us what factors are involved in fire propagation? Because you understood that one of the things Mr. Leroy talked about was this was a fast fire.
Yes, I believe that definitions of different kinds of fires would be a friendly fire, a hostile fire. Friendly fires don't get out of control, don't hurt anybody. We enjoy them, fireplace or campfire or cooking. So, on the other hand, when you say a hostile fire or a fast fire, that connotes that you can tell the speed of a fire by looking at it or not considering anything else.
Does 9 on whether you fast?
It does.
Section 23.7.2 speaks to that, doesn't it?
I think it's stuck in the middle. Excuse me. Yes.
And what does that say?
It says, what the investigator may consider as excessive, unnatural, or abnormal can only occur in an accidental, or can actually occur in an accidental fire, depending on the geometry of the space, the fuel characteristics, and the ventilation of the compartment.
Tell us a little bit about that, then I want to show a video that you made. But tell us about the factors that go into it: compartment, fuel load, ventilation.
Okay. A fire in a accidental scenario will start, it's called the incipient stage, a very small stage of the fire. It will progress from that point and continue to progress depending on the fuel load and the ventilation.
Ventilation is very important.
Yes.
And fuel, fuel, do we think of it as maybe gas, oil, that kind of thing? Is that what fuel is considered?
Sorry, I missed that. Apologize.
To a fire investigator, what is fuel?
Fuel is anything that burns. Anything in this room, almost everything will burn. Steel, even how they make cars and things by melting steel and reforming it. But in a situation like we're normally used to, wood products, plastic products, cellulosic materials, and flammable and volatile materials.
And when windows burst open in a fire, does that help fuel a fire?
It does.
Why?
Because now more air and oxygen is let in.
You have a video that you made, what year?
30 years ago, I think, 1993.
And what is that intended to demonstrate?
That was intended to demonstrate at that time a specific fire, but it also was intended to show how a fire without any kind of fuel, like liquid potential that can ignite, ignitable liquids they call it now, was not involved.
And what's intended to talk about in terms of fire propagation?
To show how heat and smoke rise, which is natural, and the fire will continue to burn until there's no more fuel left or no more oxygen or somebody extinguishes it.
Were you considering, too, the time duration of how quickly a fire can develop with just accidental cause?
Yes, there's all kinds.
I agree, Carla, to an extent. If you're talking about like specific instances, like this, like how did a fire start? Well, it's all over with. The house is burnt down. You can't go back and look at it to see where it started. You can only offer an opinion from the debris, But something medical where medical facts, or something legal where legal facts, or something scientific where scientific facts, that's a different kind of an expert. You know what I mean? So I guess it would depend on the situation. Like with the dog bite chick on the chick, Dr. Marie Russell. I don't want to give her any disrespect at all because she's amazing. She knows what a dog bite looks like. So to me, she's qualified to look at John O'Keefe's arm and say, that looks like a dog bite. But she can actually see the pictures of his arm at the time. Nobody was there at the fire to say where it started. You know what I mean? So in this case, yeah, he's Monday morning quarterbacking it. Did that make sense? That's just my opinion.
Kind of national and other videos that show, a fire can go to flash over from a natural fire.
Is it intended to demonstrate admission of exhibit JJ, a demonstrative exhibit?
Mr. Blair?
Other than the limiting instruction I'm going to ask the court to give regarding this exhibit, I have no objection.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to provide that instruction now, counsel? Okay. Jury, I have an instruction for you. This video is being admitted only to illustrate this witness's testimony. The parties agree that the video is not in any way a recreation of the events at issue in this trial.
And this video, crap. Just like that knife throwing video in the Courtney Clinny hearing. That's crap. That does not equate at all to her throwing that knife at Christian Amancelli. Not at all. Crap.
You may only consider this video to help you understand and evaluate the witness's testimony as it relates to the speed at which a fire might grow and
100%.
propagate in the absence of liquid accelerants under certain conditions. Counsel
Thank you, Your Honor.
satisfied with that instruction?
That's fine.
Mr. Blair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, what,
JJ?
JJ? Court will receive exhibit JJ into evidence.
And you can kind of describe for us as what we're seeing.
I want to see it. I know it's crap, but I still want to see it. So I can make fun.
Right now, in that cardboard box, there's crumbled paper product. It was lit with a match. And there's nothing else to influence its growth outside of, the configuration of the structure and the fuel load.
And you started at 2:04 p.m.?
It says it on that one. I'm not sure there are two camcorders videoing this, and I don't know if the other one says the same thing. I think it does, yes. We switch from this camera after about a minute to the camera on the other side.
Are they trying to burn down the whole building?
Jury, is this board in your way? Better? Okay, thank you.
This is just switching the cameras.
Oh, really good camera work there, guys.
It was getting hot and they were moving it back, the camera.
You were actually present at this video?
Yes. It's burning a building inside my building. Probably not the smartest thing to do.
Yeah. You think? Burns hurt. Fire's hot. Paper burns.
And what is this showing us right here when it hits the ceiling?
Heat and smoke, fire, go to the something that stops it from going straight up, a horizontal surface being the ceiling, and then it spreads out in all directions and continues to burn. Until the fuel's expended.
How does that prove that Linda didn't set the fire?
And this is in an enclosed space.
It's not totally enclosed. It's, as I said, I had a fire truck, and I had a fire truck, or I had a way to put the fire out, but it's in a big warehouse. My office, where my office was, had a 30-foot ceiling, so this is only an 8-foot ceiling. So we're not going to let it get beyond where it should. But to answer your question, there is sufficient fuel, sufficient oxygen to keep the fire going until we extinguished it.
And this is the speed of the fire?
Yes, and that's into 3 minutes, I think.
No, they're filming it in slow
Right,
motion.
that's only about 3 minutes into the fire.
Yes. And if everything was, all what it's going through is non-combustible, double thick drywall. So we had plenty of time to let it burn and not have to worry about it going through into the rest of my building. We had 2 hallways to make it, so we had sufficient room for it to spread. And then the last one, where the last hallway goes right out to a 16-foot overhead commercial door.
And it's only about 4 minutes in, 2:07.
Yes. And there's the firefighter's got his full gear on, including a Nomex headgear and a self-contained breathing apparatus. And when they pulled back, there was no fire anywhere near them. It was just a small fire, just to show you how convected and radiated heat transfer can give you some serious burns. So they were protected and they got out before it got worse.
Okay. That's the end of that video. You illustrated that to show how fast fire can propagate even without any liquid accelerant or anything.
Yes.
Now, you also showed us, that fire is going pretty crazy in a few minutes. You've been in plenty of fires as a firefighter. Is it as dangerous as it gets?
Yes, and that one's controlled, so everybody knew what was going to happen, and they knew there's no more fuel to ignite to hurt them. So, and they had fire hose line right there from a fire truck. But
let me address this. When you go through your training, is it so that you know how to act in a fire where it's
yes,
you're an inferno?
Yes, it's your job to put that out no matter what. People always think you see people running away and crazy firemen running in. You have to know what you're doing to do that.
What are the things you're combating in terms of critical stress and the way the body reacts?
Well, certainly your heart's pumping more than it would normally. You're excited and you are under a lot of stress because a lot of times we come to homes, we don't know if there's anybody in there. We always treat the fires as there is somebody there.
You've learned about critical stress factors that the body goes through.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. I think this is outside his area of expertise.
Goes through his training as a firefighter. That's why they do repetitive training.
Can you wait till the judge rules before you argue?
Medical.
No?
If you stay away from any medical opinion, it's fine.
You have received training on how the body reacts in critical stress situations, right?
Yes.
And those symptoms include what?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, that he's
Part of his
received training. It doesn't mean he's an expert on giving an opinion to a jury about what it might
Maybe
be.
lay more foundation of what
Sure.
the training was.
Tell us where your training was, what your training was, and what kind of subject matters you covered with respect to how a body might react in critical stress.
Well, the first 320 hours that we had, and we were able to cope with that.
The sound in the video just unsynced for no reason. What is happening? I hate that.
And you rely on the people you're working with to have that same feeling that you do. You know, when you're going in with somebody, that we always had a thing called 2 in, 2 out, that we would go in together as a team. And if we were
Hang on, I'm going to reload it. That's going to drive me crazy.
For us is what we're seeing.
That's okay.
Yes.
Okay, right now.
Is it as dangerous as it gets?
Yes, that one's controlled. I'm not sure the whole program that you're wanting. Well, it's sort of like muscle memory when you're doing what you're doing, and you
What are the things you're combating in terms of critical stress? And
the firefighter's got his, you know, you're excited and you are under a lot of stress because a lot of times we come to homes, we don't know if there's anybody in there. We always treat the fires as there is somebody there.
you've learned about critical stress factors that the body goes through,
I'm going to object, Your Honor. I think this is outside his area of expertise.
Well,
goes through his
They
training
run
as a
down
firefighter.
houses for practice.
That's why they do repetitive training.
It's getting to be medical.
No,
If you stay away from any medical opinion, it's fine.
I'm not asking for opinions. You have received training on how the body reacts
That stuff.
in critical stress situations, right?
Yes.
And those symptoms include what?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, that he's
Part of
received
training.
training. It doesn't mean he's an expert on giving an opinion to a jury about what it might
Maybe
be.
lay more foundation of what
Sure.
the training was.
Tell us where your training was, what your training was, and what kind of subject matters you covered with respect to how a body might react in critical stress.
Well, the first 320 hours that we had were classroom training in all aspects of fire. And as you said, what we go through as a firefighter and to make sure we were able to cope with that.
And what are the things you're trying to cope with and fight against, which is how your training is going to help you.
And you do it over and over and over again, and you rely on the people you're working with to have that same feeling that you do. You know, when you're going in with somebody, that we always had a thing called 2 in, 2 out, that we would go in together as a team. And if we were not coming out, both of us were not coming out. If we got out, both of us were going to get out. And so in that process, you know the things you're going to be dealing with. Back in my day, we didn't have self-contained breathing apparatuses, I shouldn't say in my day, in the beginning of my tenure.
Mr. Trankel, with respect to critical stress symptoms, did you learn things like tunnel vision?
Yes.
Describe for us, please, the other body symptoms that you learned to prepare against with training.
Object is to relevance, Your Honor. I don't know how this is even relevant at this point.
Well, can I explain the relevance since he made an objection?
I think, is it relating to Ms. Stermer? Is that?
Yes,
where you're going
these
with
folks train for critical stress. A middle-aged woman does not train for critical stress. That's how it's relevant.
We're providing facts into the record here. I'm just concerned about what's going on in front of the jury with some of these statements that are being made. But in addition, he's not an expert on critical stress. and how a layperson, he's a firefighter, he's talking about a firefighter, not how a layperson might perceive it.
It's
How
based
long
on
would
his
you
training.
Testify as to firefighters.
Yes.
And their stress levels and what he's learned through his training, but
Right.
not laypersons.
I didn't ask what a layperson, I just asked, what symptoms have you understood through your training that you might go through that the training would help? You said tunnel vision.
Right, well, make
What
sure
is-
you
Not have
maintain focus for sure, what you're doing and not panic.
that doesn't have to do
Um,
anything about Linda.
I'm not sure the whole program that you're clarifying.
Well, have
Judge,
you learned that
Justice
you lose your
Stanley
fine motor
Jack's gonna be
skills?
done with it.
Yes,
All right, that's why people fumble with their keys in a high stressful situation.
Yes.
Objection, leading.
It's
Oh.
leading, and now it's
Thank you.
outside the scope. I'll sustain.
We'll go to something here.
Quit bullying the judge. This judge needs to grow backbone.
The gas on the sweatpants we were talking about. Under the scientific method, you remember that Mr. Leroy arrived on the scene 3 hours after,
yes,
and that Mr. Stermer was at some point outside the house.
he was.
Do you have some understanding of how Mr. Stermer got from the house to where he was initially found and then transported?
He wasn't
From the
there.
house to where he was initially found, no. But from the movement afterward, yes.
And the movements afterward included, first of all, Mr. Matheny putting clothes on him.
Clothing being placed on him. Mrs. Stermer was on top of him, then she allowed Mr. Matheny, or not allowed, Mr. Matheny did put a bunch of things on him, but then there was also another movement.
And that other movement involved what?
I don't know if it was the fire chief or somebody else. There was somebody to assist to lift Mr. Stermer and put him into a little boat and then move him farther away from the actual burning building, because there was fear of there was a 220-gallon fuel oil tank right next to the house, and he wasn't too far from that, so they moved him away.
And as a fire origin and cause expert, you remember Mr. Leroy 3 hours later said he smelled gasoline,
Yes,
or he smelled something fuel and it turned out to be positive gasoline on the sweatpants.
yes,
Do you have to, as a scientific person under the scientific method, have to rule out how that gas could have gotten on the sweatpants?
absolutely.
And one of the things you have to rule out is, was there,
Objection, leading.
Thank you.
do you understand,
It's sustained, it's leading.
Wait.
okay, what one of the things are in terms of the boat transfer?
Objection, leading, Your Honor, he's still leading the witness.
Ask you to ask non-leading questions,
I will.
please. Direct.
Sir, tell us, if you're the fire origin and cause investigator, what you need to consider in terms of the transfer. Found him to the house.
In that transfer of movement from where he was lying to where he was put in the bus, if there was any possibility of any other potential for a gasoline or fuel oil or any other kind of ignitable liquid to have gotten on him. You would have to take the boat, and we use things sometimes like sterile gauze and things like that to get liquid and then take that into evidence and have it go to the laboratory just to check to make sure there wasn't something else. And even on the ground, I would have checked the ground he was on. People are driving back and forth and all that. I don't know what was on the ground that might have been a contaminant. So
What
those
about-
are things you need to think about.
What about talking to witnesses, family members?
Absolutely.
How about the
Did
van
you
that
find
ran
any
over?
evidence that Mr. Leroy did any of that?
He pretty much didn't talk to anybody.
Or wipe anything down?
No,
Am I right?
correct.
All right. In your review of the evidence, did Mr. Leroy even consider collecting data for the boat?
According to what he testified to, he didn't even know a boat existed.
Okay, so according to the scientific method, if you don't collect the data, you can't go through all the other steps, right?
Correct.
And what does that do to your confidence level that he actually ruled out that particular alternate hypothesis?
back to percentage zero.
Now, would you also have to consider maybe possible contamination?
Yes.
How would you consider that? And what are you talking about?
Well, we also know that Mr. Matheny placed clothing and other items on Mr. Leroy for a variety of reasons. He's pretty well naked in the ground and it's winter. And that Mr. Matheny had an occupation where he came into contact with flammable and ignitable liquids.
And what would you have to do in order to determine that maybe contamination caused it?
Well, if you were the person taking the evidence, each one should have been analyzed separately. But to compound the problem, these things were placed into the body bag together and were transported, and then each one were positive for slight residue of gasoline.
Objection. He can't testify as to what the level of residue was, Your Honor. He said slight. He can't do that.
I'll allow you to cross-examine on that point.
Thank you. You do know what the threshold that Mr. Ernst said the machine was?
Yes,
0.0005,
correct.
4 zeros and 5.
Right.
Now, one of the things that Mr. Leroy said he smelled the gas 3 hours before, do you have to consider and collect evidence about maybe what did people smell when they were the first people on the scene?
Yes, absolutely. And I think during the course of time, he did find that out.
Did you see where he did not interview Mr. Matheny?
Yes, he did not.
And he didn't interview Ms. Calhoun?
He did not.
And he didn't interview Mr. Masali?
No.
If they have testified in this trial that they didn't smell anything and they were the first 3 people there, would that be something you'd have to consider in terms of whether you could rule out maybe there was contamination, maybe there was something else?
That's why I talked to them.
Okay. And would you also then, well, let me ask you this. Mr. Leroy says it doesn't matter what they say. Is that appropriate?
Selective choice of who you want to interview and believe, I guess, I would say was wrong.
Okay. Does NFPA 921 speak to that in terms of confirmation bias?
Yes.
Tell us what confirmation bias is.
Confirmation bias is when you already have a preconceived idea that what happened and you want to confirm that with the evidence. And so it comes to fit your idea of what happened.
Okay. Confirmation bias described in NFPA 921, section 4.3.10. Can you read that for us?
Somehow we got things on the place. Maybe I can read it from up there.
He just-
Confirmation bias occurs when the investigator relies exclusively on data that supports the hypotheses and fails to look for, ignores, or dismisses contradictory or non-supporting data.
And then it continues, does it not?
Failure to consider alternate or opposing hypotheses or prematurely discounting seemingly contradictory data without appropriate analysis can result in incorrect conclusions.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me so long. Maybe I do need glasses.
Best, from the evidence that you have reviewed, does that fit into what Mr. Leroy did in terms of contradictory data?
He did not do anything to do that.
Would you say that that fits the definition of confirmation bias, what Mr. Leroy did?
Yes.
And what does that do for your confidence level in his opinion that the gasoline on the sweatpants related to the house as opposed to anything afterwards?
There is no confidence.
If there is a theory that Mr. Stermer was set on fire with gasoline, do you remember what Mr. Leroy said in terms of the evidence of any gasoline in the house?
He opined that through extrapolating the gas that was detected on his sweatpants confirmed there was gasoline inside the living room.
And what is that in terms of scientific certainty versus speculation?
All speculation.
And what is speculation in terms of an expert? Is that appropriate?
It is not.
Why not?
Sorry. Person who is doing a scientifically proper investigation is trying to disprove those different hypotheses, and there was nothing that Mr. Leroy did to show that there was an intentionally set incendiary fire.
And do you recall what he said where he admitted there's no evidence of gasoline in the house other than sweatpants on testing positive?
Yes.
Do you have experience, sir, in your vast career with what symptoms somebody might show if they were set on fire and inhaled gas,
Objection, Your Honor.
inhaled
He is
fire?
not a pathologist. He cannot give this opinion.
This isn't, I asked him for his experience with being a fire and origin and cause, attending autopsies, and having experience seeing people who've been caught on fire and what symptoms they exhibited on autopsy. That is absolutely within his background. It's based on his experience.
How a person may react when set on fire, he's not capable of doing that. He's not a pathologist.
I'm not talking about,
He's a fire investigator, not somebody trained in human mechanics, dynamics, anything to do with pathology, how the human body, organ systems. There's just no way.
Your Honor, he has experience with autopsies, what he's observed for people in fire investigations where he has actually investigated people who have been caught on fire and inhaled fire and what that exhibits. That's based on his experience. He doesn't have to be a medical doctor. These are his observations.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I think it is outside the scope of his area of expertise.
The gasoline on sweatpants, we talked about that and ruling out other things. Do you have, I think you didn't give us the opinion on whether that's reliable, that gasoline on the sweatpants has anything to do with this case.
I'm objecting, that's been asked and answered.
That hasn't been asked and answered.
How about we stop now and take our morning break?
How about an answer to the question?
It's been asked and answered, so we can move on when we get back. Okay, jury, remember your rules. Don't discussion of the case or looking at social media or media. We'll make it about 15 minutes again.
They are. They're bad. They're as bad as rust. And I can't believe she said, can we tone the emotion down? Because that was absolutely appropriate emotion. Because this guy, he doesn't follow the rules.
Okay, council, jury has left. Any matters to address in the break?
None, Your Honor.
No? Okay, thank you.
He doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't, when there's an objection, this is why I keep going, dude, when there's an objection, he doesn't wait for the judge to rule. The judge could overrule that objection, but he immediately starts arguing it. He doesn't need to argue it unless the judge says sustained. And if the judge says sustained, then he should say, may we approach, Your Honor? Then go to the bench and argue it. But that's not what he's doing. Immediately, when there's an objection, he doesn't even wait. He just starts arguing. And that's bad form for an attorney to do that, in my opinion. It shows your hand and that you're a jerk.
Jury,
Yes, Your Honor, we approach to address it.
you may.
Good. Approach and tell the judge that this guy's an asshole and you want him to quit doing it. Oh, dang it. I'm trying to make a new emoji, but I forgot how to use screenshots on the iPad, so I'm sending it to the computer. And now I lost. For some reason, StreamYard won't let me do anything else but StreamYard on the computer. So I gotta do anything I want to do extra on the iPad.
Any other matters, counsel?
No, I don't think so, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Blair, from your end?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, speculations are supposed to be objected to. They don't always get objected to, though. Well, experts can make an opinion. Experts are the only people that are allowed to make an opinion, but they have to be an opinion based on what they're an expert in. Like if you're a medical expert, you can't say, in my opinion, she didn't love Todd anymore. Or a fire expert in this case. Because that doesn't fall under your expertise as a fire expert, that she didn't love Todd anymore. You know what I mean? So,
Welcome back, jury.
you have to be under your...
And sir, you're reminded that you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller?
Thank you. Mr. Treckle, I just wanted to make sure I summarize when we're talking about the excavation, just to put it a bow on it. Do you have an opinion whether Mr. Leroy did what he said he did?
Objection asked.
Your Honor, we're summarizing.
You haven't already covered
Just summarize.
what he did what?
In terms of the excavation, do you have an opinion that he actually did that?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Summarizing it.
That part has been asked and answered.
I'm just summarizing, Your Honor.
Okay, we don't need the summary. Thank you.
She said sustained. Shut your face.
Mr. Leroy said in his testimony that gasoline can completely be burned up, which is why there's no evidence, zero, of gasoline in his area of origin, the living room. Is that possible?
Possible, but highly unlikely, but absolutely you can't say that because he didn't excavate, so how can he find if there was or was not gasoline there? There was no excavation, so there was no evidence taken, and no analysis. You can't just arbitrarily say, well, gee, you must have been consumed in the fire when you didn't even try to find it.
Is there evidence in the rubble that you've seen that would suggest that if there was gasoline, it would have been
Yes,
found?
supposed to
like in terms of how the material is and whatnot?
I say that it would or would not be is dependent upon the fact that somebody actually tried. I have not seen, if you do an excavation and you have other proofs or, data that suggests that there was an accelerant used, that you find it.
Let's talk about the gasoline on the 100% polyester sweatpants. First of all, just in order to set this up, I want you to look at that big binder there.
This one?
You did an examination of all the clothes in this case.
I did.
And you saw the clothes that was taken out of, we saw these silver cans and whatnot.
I did.
All right. I want you to look at Exhibit M. All the various pages, and just tell us if that represents the clothes and the packages that you saw in your examination.
There are various packages and items that were placed into evidence, which I think they're in this room too, that were recovered. I actually saw most of them, I think, also. When I didn't see some of these.
Okay, but you saw the evidence and included the sweatpants?
Yes.
All right, move for the admission of Exhibit M. They represent what was presented to us at his inspection. Thank you. You take a look at a couple of the pictures from Exhibit M. Those, the sweatpants that you saw.
They appear to be.
Okay. And then this, did you have an understanding of the material that the sweatpants was made out of?
Yes, I do.
100% polyester?
Yes.
Okay. Did you obtain some polyester 100% polyester sweatpants?
I did.
Okay. Did you run a video of a test of an exemplar?
Yes.
With and without gasoline?
Yes.
Did you bring a pair of the exemplar 100% polyester sweatpants with you?
I did.
Can I show that to the jury? And I'd like to move for the admission of Exhibit Q.
They're in this bag. Let me take them out.
I don't think it's,
As long as the court reads the cautionary instruction.
Thank you. Do you want me to read it now?
Yes,
or-
please.
Right, it's a good time to read it?
let me set up the foundation of the
Okay.
video. The video, you did a video showing ignition of 100% polyester sweatpants with and without gasoline.
Yes.
And how much gasoline did you use?
2 ounces.
Okay. What was it intended to show?
It's intended to show the difference between a fire that is accelerated in the presence of gasoline in the incipient stages. Well, it doesn't really ever have an incipient stage, to showing that with a match, our lighter polyester resists burning. If it does, it starts melting as opposed to burning.
You can go ahead and read the instruction, Your Honor.
Thank you. I will admit the video into
Yes, and
evidence.
let me just
for-
formally move for the admission of Exhibits R and S. R without the gasoline, S with the gasoline.
R and S. Mr. Blair, any objection then? I'm going to read the
No.
instruction. Okay. Jury, an instruction for you. This video is being admitted only to illustrate the witness's testimony. The parties agree that the video is not in any way a recreation of the events at issue in this trial. You may only consider this video to help you understand, well, I think there's 2, right? 2 videos here. To help you understand and evaluate the witness's testimony as it relates to how polyester clothing might burn when doused with 2 ounces of gasoline versus how it might burn in the absence of any gasoline. Satisfied?
There was an instruction about the exemplar sweatpants as well.
We had one
Oh.
sentence.
Oh, that's the 2-sentence one. one of you, did you email it?
I did.
Okay, another instruction, jury. The sweatpants you will see in the video are not the same pair of sweatpants involved in this case. They are an exemplar pair of 100% polyester sweatpants, okay? Satisfied, counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to show
I think we're admitting all.
R and S.
R and S, and then M.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
what happened to Q? Q, you're.
Oh, Q, I'm sorry, yes,
Okay,
Q
Q
is
too.
the exemplar.
Okay, and you're good, Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Okay, we'll admit those.
I'm going to show exhibit R without the sweatpants first. Without the gasoline.
Outside in the wind too. It's completely different conditions.
Okay. Now I'm going to show exhibit S and tell us what you did.
I took a 4-ounce metal measuring cup and I filled it half full with 2 ounces of gasoline. And then pants, same situation. And I threw it at it, backed up, and then threw a match.
Okay.
Ignited it. Can I make a comment, Your Honor?
Your
Well,
counsel.
I need the picture on there to do
You
it.
can illustrate what we're talking about.
Well, what I want to do is let the jury see the darkened color by the liquid and then see that stays last thing to burn because it was still liquid
And you can see it. What is it doing right now? It's burning and doing what?
and melting and falling to the ground. But I just want, you could see right in the beginning of the picture that when I threw the match, the liquid didn't ignite, everything around it ignited. And that's what I wanted them to see. That would be the first seconds of the video. And as it's continuing now, it's just dripping and burning because of the presence of the vapors of gasoline. Otherwise, it wouldn't do any of that.
See? Like I said, not equivalent test at all. That's not duplicating the circumstances. Even if it was the chimney chase or whatever he called it, it's still not equivalent. because a match was knocked
You're showing
around
the pants.
at the
But
pants.
also, is the waistband burning?
Yes, the one that's still hanging, on the post, what is really starting to burn is the waistband, because that's not polyester, it's a stretching material.
Okay. Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's opinion that there was an open flame to gasoline. Okay?
Okay,
Which was the open flame was what he considered an ignition source. Remember that?
yes,
And the gasoline, despite there being no gasoline in the area of origin. Right?
correct.
Okay. Does NFPA talk about that whole concept? First of all, there was no evidence, or did you find any evidence of an ignition source in anything?
He's on fire today.
No,
So what did he do? Make one up?
No pun intended.
with the evidence he had, he would have.
Speculation, Your Honor, make one up.
I'll sustain that objection. It calls for speculation.
If you're supplying an ignition source where there is no evidence of it, does NFPA 921 speak to that?
Yes,
Now, you said that gives guidance for everything that investigators are supposed to do?
yes.
Yeah. First of all, let's look at 23.2.7.3. Can you read that?
23.2.7.3, it should be right next to the one I have, but I guess I'll do my best reading again. The investigators strongly cautioned against using subjective opinions to support his incendiary cause determination in the absence of physical evidence.
And 19.6.5 tells us
Identifying the ignition source for a fire by believing to have eliminated all ignition sources found, known, or suspected to have been present in the area of origin, and for which no supporting evidence exists, is referred to as negative corpus.
Okay. And then finally, negative corpus is defined in 4.3.6.1 of NFPA 921. And that tells us what?
Any hypothesis that is incapable of being tested, either physically or analytically, is an invalid hypothesis.
And
A hypothesis developed based on absence of data is an example of a hypothesis that is incapable of being tested.
so NFPA guides us in that. And Mr. Leroy found no evidence of an ignition source, right?
He did not.
And why didn't he? In
Well-
terms of excavation?
Well, he didn't do any excavation, so how can you find something if you don't look for it?
And a first fuel, can you tell us what first fuel ignited means?
Means the first, well, when we talk about fuel, it's fuel load. It doesn't have to be a flammable or combustible liquid. Could be your clothing, could be something that's not a hard piece of wood. Something has to have an ignition that can be a chain of ignitability to start burning everything else. But simple household furnishings and things like that.
So in simple terms, it's the first thing that catches fire.
Yes,
All right. Do you also have to, well, we talked about, you have to tell us how the ignition source and the first thing that caught fire actually came together.
sure, because there's all kind of ignition sources here and all kind of flammable or fuel, but you and I are all fuel, and if there's no ignition source and no, well, say there is an ignition source, say something is burning in this room, but you need to find out how that came together to burn one of us, basically.
And if you can't find all three things that we talked about, you have to determine, in terms of a cause, you have to say it's what?
It's undetermined. You can't, if you don't have any of those things or part of those things, how can you come to a definitive conclusion and say it is accidental and or incendiary?
And if you don't have a cause of a fire, can you classify a fire?
The only classification, it comes under classification, is undetermined.
Okay. Can you describe the four classifications for us?
I usually think there's only three, but there's one that's called natural, which I always put as accidental, like the act of God, lightning, earthquake, things of that nature is a natural fire. Fire that's accidental obviously speaks for itself. A careless cook on a stove, any number of things that can be done accidentally without having an intent to do
I wonder if
wrong.
they'll do something like that
The
in the
other one is
future.
an intentional act. An incendiary fire is an intentional act to cause a fire where it's not supposed to be caused.
And only one supports a crime?
Yes,
Would that be an incendiary fire?
yes.
And given that Mr. Leroy didn't do the fundamental excavation to find the evidence, what level of trust do you put in any of his opinions?
Well, because things weren't done like they need to be done, no matter for what reason, you can't really then opine that you have anything but an unintentional or an undetermined fire. You can't say one way or the other whether it's accidental or incendiary if you don't do the job to finish what you need to do to get that information.
So in your expert opinion, let's start with the origin, given that you said he didn't adequately consider the chimney chase for one. What trust do you have in his opinion that the living room is the area of origin?
I don't have any, because if the fire started in the chimney chase and then extended to the living room, there is no way of telling the difference because of the destruction of the property. It's too badly burned, and that hypothesis, particularly of the chimney chase, as I say, Mr. Leroy actually gave a whole page and a half of his definition how it would happen, but he says it couldn't by no other reason.
And now, how would you determine, forget the origin now, going to the cause, what classification is the only one that you could come to given the evidence in this case?
Certainly, if you had no evidence of where the fire actually originated, it would certainly be even more so impossible to determine a cause. You cannot put a label on something that you're saying, well, how? And if you haven't got the answer to the first one, you certainly can't have the answer to the second one.
So that classification would only have to be
Undetermined.
right. Do you place a lot of importance and weight on what classification you're going to give to a fire when you're doing your analysis?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Because what you're saying, particularly Well, in any circumstance, if you say the fire is accidental and it might affect another family member, and because you did something stupid, for example, you set up a situation between people that aren't very good, and if you made a wrong determination even for that,
I
it
love
might cause family strife. If you call something incendiary, that
I
is
came to my high
something
school and
that's
my mom
so
wouldn't let me go.
important to make sure you have the right call, because you alter people's lives. You change people's lives.
Objection, Your Honor, I don't think he can testify to this. This is well outside the scope of expert opinion.
He is an expert, and this is the kind of thing he considers when coming to a determination of classification, because there are ramifications. That's what he's testifying to.
Thank you. I think the jury understands that. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Let's talk about Mr. Leroy's causation issues with respect to time of day, two able-bodied people, and an abnormally fast fire. We talked about the abnormally fast fire, right?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall Mr. Leroy testifying in the course of this case that the cause of the fire was because of the time of the day and two able-bodied people were in the house, only one survived?
Yes, I recall that.
Can you show us 921, the book?
I can show you 921, but you're not going to find anything like that in the book.
Are you going to find that in any book?
No.
Are you going to find that with any credible source or authority in the fire investigation business?
None.
How about the idea of two able-bodied people? That was the time of day. Two able-bodied people. Do able-bodied people die in accidental fires?
Able-bodied people die in fires, get out of fires, but that is not anything to do with origin and causation of fire.
What is your opinion as to the quality of Mr. Leroy's opinion about that?
Well, he's totally in error, and he never learned that in school. If he did, we need a new school.
Let's talk about this red gas can that was found in the front yard the next day. Have you looked into that idea of somehow could it be related to this fire?
Yes.
I'm going to show you
Cool.
photograph 32 from Mr. Leroy's photographs admitted to one of the prosecution exhibits. You see this picture taken the night of the fire and that red gas can?
I don't know that I have that.
It's up on the screen.
Oh, I guess I don't have to look. Quick picture.
Equipment has on the possible location of that.
Objection, speculation.
No, he's been a firefighter. He knows when they drag hoses around. Thank you.
Well, when you can see in the photograph that the gas can is being encircled by hose lines, which are pretty heavy when they've got water in them. They don't just pop up. When you're dragging around, they're dragging whatever might be in that perimeter. And so that gas can, I know, had been moved because.
Objection, Your Honor. He can't say he knows it was moved.
There's been no foundation for that response, so unless he lays a foundation, I'll strike the response.
Okay. When you were a firefighter, do hoses stay in one spot or do they move around as you're dragging through the fire?
Firefighters are moving the hose lines wherever they are necessary to try to extinguish the fire. And sometimes you have it in one location, you get the fire that you think controlled there, and you go to another avenue to try to put it out.
Though.
If you look at the front of that house, there's holes cut by the firefighters to give them access to be able to put water into that house. You'll see it's impossible for them not to move it.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain that objection and strike that response. Jury, don't consider
Hopefully
the
they'll call him.
response, please.
Okay. The
For a
next
rebuttal.
day, Mr. Leroy showed the photograph. And do you recall, do we have that gas
Did they
can
take
here?
the picture the night before the
That it was, the
firemen
spout was
got
broken in
there?
two pieces,
Yes,
After.
and the gas can was very muddy.
yes.
I'm
Do
ready
you
for
recall,
replay.
or did
I mean,
Mr.
recalls.
Ernst, the MSP analyst testimony, affect your opinion on whether the red gas can had anything to do with this fire? What did you rely on in terms of Mr. Ernst?
Container, it was vapor. He takes and heats this, whatever he has, if it's a metal evidence container or if it's a nylon
Sit down,
bag.
I'm ready for
He heats it
cross.
up with a heated headspace and takes a syringe and pulls out a headspace and then analyzes it. There was, by his chromatograms and mass spectrometry, as I recall, he said that it was evaporated gasoline up to 85 to 95%. So that also is important.
And do you recall him describing it as the fumes representing old gas?
Yes,
Did that factor in?
yes, that would be the case.
Do you recall what Mr. Leroy admitted as a fire expert as to whether the gas can had anything to do with this case?
He said he could not establish there was any link between the fire and that gas can.
Because there's no evidentiary basis for that?
Yes, correct.
And is that your opinion as well?
Yes,
Do you also recall what he said when I asked him, well, if you were to have that opinion, you'd do speculating. Remember that?
yes, and speculation, well, yes.
Go ahead.
I was getting, speculation is a guess. It has no evidentiary value.
And if you masquerade a guess as an expert opinion, what are you doing in terms of putting out your opinion as an expert?
No objection, Your Honor. I don't think that's a relevant question.
This absolutely ties into what Mr. Leroy admitted.
I think this goes more to argument, counsel so sustain.
Do you recall Mr. Leroy saying that would be misleading the jury?
Yes, that would be misleading.
And do you recall Mr. Ernst saying that would be misleading the jury?
Yes,
Any opinion that is based on speculation would be misleading the jury?
misleading whoever, the jury in this case.
Okay.
No.
Do you have an opinion? Mr. Leroy said that he complied with all the dictates of NFPA 921. Do you have an opinion whether that is true?
That he did?
Yes.
Experts are allowed to sit in and watch the testimony. So they're allowed to watch the testimony of everybody else, and then they can then, as an expert, give their opinion of the other professionals about what they did and what they said. So it's not considered hearsay, which sometimes is fine. Other times I don't know what I feel about that, to be honest. I think as a professional, like me being a nurse, if I had testified in a case and then an expert witness then gets up and tells me, says that my testimony was wrong, I would be very upset by that. Because you don't, in the real world, you don't always go by the book. You can't in some situations. And I think that there are times when experts are wrong because you can't always go by the book. So, I don't know. Like we were talking about experts before, sometimes they're okay and sometimes it's just crap.
I have an opinion, yes.
What is your opinion to the jury?
My opinion that obviously he did not. We've come up to several different areas. We've explained that he did not follow, because the evidence speaks for itself, or the lack of evidence.
Method which is required for your business. Do you have an opinion on whether he did that?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
Opinion he did not. Everything that you've had before you and everything that I've seen as did an excavation. And there's photographs from Mr. Shinsky that
Exactly.
shows that he
Nathan, what are you doing on StreamYard?
done it and everything to prove that he didn't.
So what does that suggest to you about Mr. Leroy's testimony about whether he did it?
Well, he's telling an untruth to you.
Stop, StreamYard. But the jury is still the finder of fact. So I have a shirt with a black cat on it. I got it before I got Shadow, I think. I don't remember, but afterwards. It's a black cat. It has books, and it says, I crochet, I read books, and I know things. The jury is still the trier of facts. So just because an expert says that a professional got something wrong, they don't have to take that as fact. They get to decide what they decide. StreamYard, quit your chiz now.
Anything he did? No, he didn't. He didn't. The fact that all these things have been presented to you, I have little or no confidence in his opinion.
What's it doing on your guys' end?
How many hours do you think you have in this case?
Upwards of 2,000.
Okay. And you've tested this before
Yeah.
for the defense,
Yes.
and you've testified in civil cases on behalf of insureds, the people who have insurance,
Yes.
and on behalf of insurance companies.
Yes.
So you, in every aspect, you've been retained and testified by both sides.
And sometimes third-party cases where it's subrogation, that one company says another company's at fault for causing a fire. Yeah, so that's not either side, I guess.
Okay. Let me just take one quick second. I'm going to return to this. Mr. Tranquil, have we covered all the subjects that you wanted to have covered in terms of what you were assigned to do and review?
Yeah, I believe you did.
Okay. In terms of Mr. Leroy's documentation of his work, Were you hamstrung in any way?
Well,
Your Honor, I guess I'm going to object. I think he's already talked about the adequacy of the documentation, the questions have been asked and answered.
That hasn't been asked and answered, Your Honor. I can tell you that.
I'm not clear where you're going with it.
Just what affected the lack of documentation and the inadequate?
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Overall.
well, many times coming after the fact, even, excuse me, when it's been years even, if there's adequate documentation, I could actually make a definitive opinion in what may be the cause, either agreeing or not agreeing with the person, but actually coming up with a cause rather than me saying it was undetermined. So that's been the problem in this case.
Okay. But in any situation where you can't rule out different theories or ideas of what could have happened, where it could have started, what is your obligation as a fire expert to call it?
My obligation is to be truthful and call it undetermined. I can't tell.
And in this case, is the area of origin just too big because of the damage?
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
sustain the objection.
I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Frankel.
Take that down to the,
I'm gonna take everything down.
okay, good.
Yep.
Blocks.
Excuse me.
Put the crochet up.
Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Streamer, behave.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trinkle.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to kind of circle back to something you said. You indicated you have 2,000 hours into this case. Is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
And you're billing for those hours, correct?
My billing is zero.
You're billing zero.
It's the same as all the other people working in this case.
So ordinarily, sir, you charge $225 per hour, correct?
That was my old fee. Now it's $275 for investigative and $350 for court testimony.
I understand. So you're not receiving any compensation at all for your opinion or to come here to testify today. Is that
That's correct. The whole crew of us are getting nothing.
Do you expect to receive something later?
No,
So you indicated that you reviewed all the documentation in this case. Is that correct?
all that I was provided.
Okay, what were you specifically provided?
Specifically, all the different, they're in the computer, most of my things. It was provided the initial fire report from Lawrence Township. I was provided the initial investigation report by Mr. Leroy. I was provided the report from Mr. Shinsky. All the statements under oath by Ms. Stermer, the information that was on recording by Mr. Shinsky of what Ms. Stermer had to say. Photographs, hundreds of photographs from all the responding personnel. In fact, probably most of the reports from, maybe all the reports, but I don't know. I got what I got. But from Maziowski and Ms. Rout and the lab reports, all those kinds of things. Plus I conduct, well, you said what I was presented. I'm sure there's more.
Okay, fair enough. But my main point, I guess I'm going to get to too, is you were provided the various statements of Linda Stermer, correct?
Yes,
And you reviewed those statements, correct?
I did.
And those statements, she would be considered, at least at the onset, an eyewitness in this matter, correct?
Yes,
And eyewitness statements, you're allowed to rely upon those according to NFPA 921, correct?
yes, you do.
And eyewitness statements are relevant, could be relevant in not only determining the area of origin of the fire, correct?
Yes,
And they could also be relevant in determining the cause of the fire. Is that also correct?
some instances, yes.
And you indicated during your direct testimony that to you, an excavation means an archaeological dig, correct?
That's the way it's mostly described, depending on the depth of it. I think I also said that sometimes you don't have an archaeological dig because there's nothing really to dig through. And I think I said something like about fire in a kitchen stove.
Well, I guess to get my point, NFPA 921 does not use the words archaeological dig anywhere in the text, does it?
They do not. Well, I don't think they do.
So when you say archaeological dig, that is your words and your definition, correct?
I would say that that's the industry's definition by most. We know it's a two-story building, the next floor and the next floor, but in this particular case, it's the roof.
He's not answering my question.
I think it's,
But
yeah.
and
I asked very simply, the use of the words archaeological dig, those are your words.
And then I replied, it is the industry's words also. We know by,
okay, that's good.
okay.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, NFPA 921 uses the words adequate when it comes, or the word adequate when it comes to excavation. Is that correct?
If you have, yeah, well, it says inadequate, so I guess maybe adequate is something that they may say, but I think adequate could be misinterpreted. But
Fair, because adequate's a subjective term, isn't it correct, sir?
yes,
Or inadequate's a subjective term, correct?
exactly. One way, one the other way. Yes.
Right, because if I was a fire investigator and I was reviewing potentially an excavation you did, I could come in and say, your excavation was inadequate, couldn't I?
Probably not behind me.
Well, that's not my question, sir. My question is, as a reviewing cause and origin expert, because of the subjective nature of the term, I could come in behind you and say, you did an inadequate job excavating, correct?
And if you did, you'd have to establish that I actually did an
Your
inadequate
Honor,
job.
can he please answer the question?
All right. It's kind of hard to answer yes or no to that question.
The last one, I think, was possible, so.
Okay.
You may want to limit
Yeah,
your,
could you-
narrow your
could you repeat
questions,
it?
Mr. Blair. Yeah, we'll have him repeat.
You would agree with me that as I was a fire expert. I could come in behind your investigation, your excavation, and I could say it was done inadequately, correct?
I guess you could say that if you was you.
As a matter of fact, in this case, Mr. Leroy did do an excavation, correct?
He did move some things, yes.
Well, you saw the pictures from Mr. Shinsky, correct?
Yes.
Were you present here for his testimony in court?
I don't think I did that. I think I saw that online.
So would it surprise you to learn that the photograph Mr. Mueller showed you with the various piles out back was taken by, you understand that was taken by Mr. Shinsky?
I'm not sure who took it. I know that it was different than, go ahead. I don't know who took it.
All right. Well, it was part of a packet of Mr. Shinsky's photos that were shown to you, correct?
I think it was, yes.
And would it surprise you to learn he testified that he took that photograph before he did any excavation?
Yes. No, it wouldn't surprise me. No, not at all. It would not surprise me.
Foundation, I'm not sure what photograph he's talking about.
I asked about the photo of the rear with showing piles of debris.
There are pre and post
I'll
excavation
overrule
pictures.
the objection as the witness has answered it and
Thank
seems to
you.
understand what he's talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And so that would then indicate that Mr. Leroy did an excavation of the Stermer residence, correct?
Yes, it was obviously evidence, and I could even point out what I think he did dig through, but go ahead.
Okay. But your complaint is just with the adequacy of the excavation, correct?
I guess yes.
You guess yes or yes?
Well, I think I have to describe what I saw that was left that certainly would make it inadequate.
Again, my question, sir, is you take issue with the adequacy of his excavation, correct?
Yes.
You were also shown some photos of after the excavator hired by Mr. Shinsky had begun to remove parts of the residence, correct?
Yes,
And you were testifying, I believe, about how there was debris that was down, would be like in the basement level of the Stermer residence. Do you recall that testimony?
I commented there was debris, yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me that when an excavator is operating and removing things, things are falling into the residence as they're being broken loose by an excavator, correct?
Depending on the quality of the excavator, the excavator people I would hire would not let things fall back into the house.
Well, some of that may be out of their control though, right?
That's why they take painstaking care in how they do what they do when they're not just moving debris around to throw it in a 40-yard dumpster and have it transferred somewhere.
Well, you would agree with me that if I grabbed a hold of a large chunk of, say, roof material or something with an excavator, as I'm lifting that back with an excavator, things might fall off, right?
They might.
Hey, Rodney.
You had opinion about the area of origin in this case. Do you recall those opinions?
Yes, they're multiple.
Okay. And you would agree with me that NFPA 921 does not contain any size specification for the area of origin, does it?
There is nothing that says it has to be 6 by no. There is no. You're right.
So, for instance, an 18 by 18 living room could, in fact, be the area of origin, correct?
You would be correct, maybe that it was the area of origin, but if you did nothing to limit that to a smaller area, I just never seen it happen before, I guess.
There's no requirement that you eliminate it to a smaller area, is there?
There is no requirement that says it, yes.
So this is just, again, your subjective opinion about what should be the area of origin, correct?
If you had a house fire like this, you might as well call the whole house an area of origin, even though we know there was no fire in the east and the south sections, if that's what you're going to say. In the industry
Your Honor,
standards.
I don't think this is responsive to my question.
Sir, why don't you
All right.
restate your question so he can be more
I'm sorry.
responsive?
Sir, what I'm asking you is, well, I kind of forgot my question. I'm sorry. Yeah, your opinion in this is subjective, that the area of origin must be narrower than the living room, correct?
Yes.
He's allowed to give an opinion. That's why he's an expert. Well, I guess he's just driving that home to the jury that it's his opinion only.
You indicated, I think, on direct that you determined or you believed the area of origin was the chimney chase. Is that correct?
I said it may be because I can't isolate that and this living room. And I believe the only reason that Mr. Leroy said it was the living room because he's got gasoline in it. And that limits him from having to worry about that. And he also said that in his testimony.
Well, let's talk about that, sir, because that's interesting. You said you could rely on eyewitness statements, correct?
You decide by the physical evidence if what someone is telling.
Again, Your Honor.
No,
that's
you
not my
rely on
question.
it,
I
but-
asked him if he could rely on eyewitness statements.
Dude,
If you could
In
answer the
part.
question, you can answer yes or no.
In part. In part.
Okay. And
Don't
you believe the statements of your client, Linda Stermer, correct?
That she was downstairs and
No, I'm not asking you for a recitation, sir. I'm asking you if you believe the statements of your client that you've reviewed.
Man, answer. He's answering the question. You can't cut the witness off.
you did.
You can re-ask the question.
Thank you. You believe the statements of your client, Linda Stermer, correct?
in part.
In part.
In part.
Now, you reviewed where she said that she came up the stairs, correct?
Yes,
And you reviewed where she described that the fire extended from the master bedroom to the Todd's recliner chair, correct?
that's what she said.
And you reviewed would have been the diagram she would have drawn then in her examination under oath, correct?
I'm not sure about who drew what diagrams, but if she did one under oath, I mean, with Mr. Willison, I probably have reviewed it, but there were other diagrams that were made rough by a lot of people, so I can't really say which ones.
And you also would have read in her statement that she said it wasn't the fireplace, correct?
That's what she said.
And she indicated in her statement that there was no fire anywhere near the fireplace, correct?
That's what she said.
And that's an eyewitness statement, correct?
It's an eyewitness statement that you take at face value sometimes, and sometimes you don't. She's not a fire expert, so she wouldn't know what my thought process might have been.
Witness statements at face value. Let's talk about that since you brought that up. You brought up Mike and Connie Calhoun and Dr. Masali, correct?
Yes,
Now, you were a police officer for a period of time, correct?
I was a fire investigator lieutenant who had police powers. I carried a police badge from the Detroit Fire Department and a Detroit Police Department. I carried 2 badges.
And so you conducted interviews of witnesses then, correct?
All the time.
All the time. And you would agree with me that witnesses don't necessarily remember all details, correct?
That's one of the reasons you take it. And if it fits the patterns or the things that you know to be true with the physical evidence, that's how you differentiate one from the other.
Because based on your experience as an investigator interviewing witnesses, sometimes the stress of an event can affect how they perceive things. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And it can affect the details they might remember, correct?
Yes.
Now let's cycle back to this chimney chase as the area of origin if we can. You indicated, I believe, that a fire would start in the chimney chase from either, I think you said the flue or possibly an improperly connected chimney pipe. Is that fair? I'm summarizing, I understand.
Yeah. Well, if I can explain a little bit,
Sure.
the description given by Mr. Leroy would fit almost exactly in part with what I would say. There is a breach somehow within the connections, or I think he described it as a hole. That could happen too, depending on the material that was being used and eroded through the course of time. Those kinds of things are a potential. I also said on direct, I believe, that there might be insulation too close to. Too close to the chimney chase can cause a fire over time. The fact that something escapes from the flue vent, and it's not that it was improperly, I guess maybe that's why I took exceptions, the improperly installed. It might have been properly installed, but because buildings shift and move and do things like that, I don't know how well those things were put together with a band to hold them, non-combustible band to the sides, which are combustible. So there's a variety of reasons why that would happen. I think Mr. Leroy explained it very well, and he eliminated it because he said it would, wherever it happened, it would go up from that point to the top and burn everything out. Well, you've got a confined space, and heat is convected and radiated in that chamber also. And I know it's a very possible that there was only OSB, from what I understand, on that wall. And so as that's being eroded or destroyed by the fire, it now is weakening the OSB, which is on fire, and that could have fallen into the living room and been the room of origin. Nothing going the other direction shows any sign, and Mr. Leroy very much covered that.
So you obviously, it sounds like you agree with some of the findings of Scott Leroy. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, absolutely.
Now, but you only seem to disagree with those that ultimately lead to this being an intentionally set fire.
No, I can't even say it wasn't intentionally set. In fact, I've testified in federal court to say I can't say it was not intentionally set. I said that the way that the investigators said this fire occurred is impossible to have happened. That's what I said.
And you've actually previously testified in this, right?
Yes, you said in federal court, yes.
And you actually indicated at that time that it didn't look like it was a fireplace malfunction, correct?
At that time, I didn't have aerial photographs, and I didn't have a lot of the other photographs back in 2018 when that took place. 7 years hence, I have a lot more stuff.
What's new stuff do you have?
New photographs, more photographs that I didn't have. I mean, they're not new today. They're new from 2018 when I testified. Now they're more new. And I'm not saying it was a chimney fire either. I'm telling you, we agree that there was something substantive in that chimney that needed to be looked at and needed to be eliminated. And my point is, we can't eliminate it.
Well, let me ask you some questions about this.
Sure.
Chimney chases, for lack of a better words, are like a long, tall box that's built around the pipes that go up through the roof. Is that kind of a
Right. In
layman's way?
modern day times, yes. As I think Mr. Leroy also explained how the old chimneys were, brick
Correct.
and all that.
And we're dealing with a modern
Yes,
setup.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's how it's built.
And the purpose of that is also to kind of keep if there is a fire, keep that fire kind of contained in one area. Is that correct?
It's supposed to. In this particular case, however, this chimney chase was built directly in the middle of the house. Most chimney chases are on the outside walls. So that's why I was able to tell causes of these things, because they were severely damaged and the remainder of the house wasn't. So we were able to conduct an examination that was enough to prove what happened. And
You're not, hold on, you're not proving what happened here, correct?
No. I'm just explaining that you're right. It's supposed to be, it is in a confined area, but it is not, in most cases, there are no fire resistant materials in the chimney chase.
Fair. Now, as this, according to you, as we're describing this hypothetical chimney chase fire,
Yes,
materials are going to be actually falling down on top of the fireplace like Mr. Leroy described, correct?
yes,
And as a matter of fact, then those are going to start to catch and burn not only the wall studs behind the fireplace, but also the header above the fireplace, correct?
you're speaking of the header that holds the fireplace in place?
Yes.
No, that's pretty well protected. That's on the outside. It's not even anywhere near where the grate and the fire is being propagated and goes up a chimney on an angle. It's called a throat. I had a diagram of one and how it's assembled. So, well, go ahead.
Let me ask it this way. Maybe I'm not being clear in my question. You saw the photograph that was up on the screen that was put up on one of Mr. Leroy's photographs showing the fireplace, correct? The first floor fireplace.
Yes,
And it had a wood header that went all the way around it, correct?
header goes just above it.
Above it, I'm sorry. And there was framing around it as well still, correct?
I don't remember if I saw framing around the fireplace. I did see vertical studs going above the header.
And those are part of the chimney chase, correct?
They are.
And if a fire started in the chimney chase, the fire would then burn all of the fuel in that area, correct?
If it was not extinguished first, yes.
And we don't have it all burned in that area then, do we, sir?
We have a lot of damage, yes. By the fall down, there is certainly a lot of burning, but it did not consume what you're talking about.
So that would be an indicator then that it did not start in the chimney chase.
No, that header is on the outside. You're not looking at the interior, what was exposed eventually by the fire in the chimney chase or wherever in the building, forgetting where it was a chimney chase or not. That header was protected. You have everything else in that room, first floor and second floor level, burned to a great degree, much mass loss as it was described by Mr. Leroy, not about the chimney chase, but about how we describe things. Mass loss is the new word to say all the time rather than heavily charred, but in
Okay.
losing, okay? So what I'm saying is that particular board isn't burned and everything else is because it was protected.
Well, let me ask this, because it runs along the top of the fireplace, correct?
On the outside, yes. I mean, it's the outside base of what you're talking about to hold it together.
Can I pull up my exhibit, Your Honor?
they're losing me here.
Because
I don't
it's pretty
know.
empty here. You are so thoughtful.
I don't know how a fireplace is built, so now they're losing me.
This photo right here, sir, this is People's Exhibit 34-19. You seen this before?
I'm sure I have, yes.
Okay, that's the fireplace we're talking about, right?
Yes,
And that runs directly along the top of the fireplace, correct? That header?
just like we said, yes.
Yep. And there's a backside to that board, correct?
Yes,
And that would have burned, correct? If fire had fallen on top of that fireplace?
you don't think the backside's burned?
I don't know. You're asking me a question, sir.
I am, because you're asking me and you're showing a picture showing the front. And certainly, I think I've seen aerial views that show that backside heavily charred. So wooden, it's not burned all the way through, correct?
Because if fire was burning in the chimney chase, when it lands on top of that fireplace, it's going to burn all the way through that board, isn't it?
No. It could, but normally, no. Where OSB wood is no longer, and that would have fallen into the living room. That's the living room side.
But
This
the
side.
burning debris within the chimney chase would have fallen on top of that fireplace, correct?
Probably not. It did ignite on the opposite side. If we show the opposite side, that board is heavily charred.
What I'm trying to get to is
And I would say you're absolutely wrong. It might, but not in this condition.
you were asked about a little bit about gasoline, so I'll ask you the same question. And just so we lay a proper foundation, the vapors of gasoline are what burn, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that if I were to, for instance, even in this room, pour gasoline here on the floor possibly, and put a candle over there, that those vapors could ignite, correct?
If the vapors got as high as the candle's flame, yes.
Okay. And in this case, we have a fireplace that's fairly close to ground level, fair?
Fairly close. You see that there's a bottom framing of that. So I mean, I can't tell from the picture, but 6 inches to 12 inches maybe. I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me.
And it is possible, is it not, to deposit an accelerant in a room, leave an open source of flame in a room, and leave that room, and the fire still ignite, correct?
You're asking me a hypothetical, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I'm going to tell you about it depends, but yes, it could, depending.
And there are factors that depend on that, but it could happen, correct?
Could happen, but it depends.
Understand. It depends on probably, let me guess, the amount of gasoline and the type of ignition source, various factors, correct?
Well,
I'm just going to object here. We're asking questions, giving hypotheticals that have no basis in the evidence in this case, zero. And it has to be based on evidence in the case.
I think it is, and I'll overrule.
Okay. So, waiting for a question.
Did you get, do you know?
I think he
You
answered the
said
question,
depends.
yeah.
You said yes, depends, so.
Yeah, he did, and that's fine.
Okay.
And you heard, and we already kind of went over this, Ms. Stermer's statements about the fire going from Todd's recliner to the master bedroom, correct?
I don't know if she said it was going, and that was the depth and breadth of the fire, I guess. When you say going, it seems like you're suggesting it went from here to there.
That is what I'm at. The fire, she described a trail of fire going from the master bedroom or to his recliner or vice versa.
I guess I still don't understand. Are you saying she saw this trail here and then go there, or just saw this
Just
Why-
saw a one
saw-
continuous trail. How's
if-
that?
wide range? Yes.
Yes. In your expert opinion, that could be an accelerant trail, could it not?
Oh, I don't think anything she described would have been anything like a trail unless, as I said, if you're telling me you saw it go from here to here to here, that would be a trailer. But if you see an immense amount of fire going from a chair and including your husband in a wall, that doesn't tell me anything, except there was a fire in a wide area.
Let's talk about your the first video of the burning of the storage room. Is that right?
Yes, it was storage room for a party store.
And that was actually a fire designed to replicate a other fire you were investigating.
Yes,
And we saw lots of cardboard boxes in that video. Is that correct?
yes,
And they were started on the floor, correct?
yes.
And then they were actually stacked up to the ceiling, correct? Or close.
Close, yes.
Close to the ceiling.
Yes.
Fair. And then there was also a shelf along the ceiling with more cardboard boxes on there, correct?
Yes, they were, yeah, just yes.
And that fire, those cardboard boxes are fuel, correct?
Yes,
And would you agree with me, and I understand this is a layman's way to describe it, but cardboard boxes are fairly easy to set on fire.
That was going to be an example of what was on the top. They are not easily ignitable up on top. And cardboard, it all depends, I guess, again, but those cardboard boxes, you saw how long it took for the sides to burn and how long it took them to actually become involved in the fire. So they will readily ignite, but not in a fast format or the way they, I don't know what the word I wanted to use, but on the top, they're old, long neck boxes that carried 24 bottles of beer. They don't ignite very easily. They're very strong. They're more dense. They're more pressed together.
Well, you would agree with me, obviously, that cardboard burns much easier than, say, like a log of wood.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that fuel load that you created in that room was designed to direct the fire up to the ceiling, correct?
No, it was to simulate the conditions that were told me by the owner. And this was the third fire we did. We built that building 3 times because we believed this guy, but the evidence didn't look like, I mean, if we just took it at face value, we'd have said the guy set the fire. The third one came out almost identical to what he saw, like what Ms. Stermer may have seen, and how that fire progressed before the fire department arrived. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to simulate and see if we could create something that made sense to us by what he told us. And he told us what the cardboard boxes were. He told us what was in the cardboard boxes and how he'd stacked them. And that's why we did it that way.
And you said these were 8-foot ceilings, correct?
Yes.
And at the very beginning of the video, it looks like there's a fire started in the cardboard box. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
What was used to start that?
A match.
A match? Any accelerant used?
No.
You would agree with me that accelerant could have increased the speed of that fire, correct?
In the incipient stages, that there's stages of fire. under normal conditions, nothing's normal when it's hostile, but say you light a fire in a fireplace, you're doing whatever you need to stack the wood up in a configuration, put paper under it to make it burn quickly. What happens with gasoline and fuels like that, I don't like the term ignitable liquids because you just told me earlier, liquids don't burn. I was against that, and I tried to not get it to happen in NFPA 921. I like flammable, combustible, things that are defined by my background. But going back to what you're saying, yes, in the initial stages, that would have not just gone slowly, it would have blared up or flowed up quite quickly.
A sudden fire, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And going back to the chimney fire, those fires generally tend to start slowly and build, correct?
Yes, you have to pyrolyze the wood that is, I shouldn't use that word, but you got to take the liquid out of a solid to make it gas, to make it burn. And when you do that, it takes time when you only got a small, say, not a spark, but a small ember that comes out. It takes time. And over time, some of that wood becomes more susceptible to ignition. That's, I guess, what a better way of saying it.
Sure. And like the old adage goes, there's usually, if there's smoke, there's fire. So we expect smoke before the fire, correct?
In most instances, yes.
And in a chimney fire, we would have, it would have been expected that there would have been some smoke before this erupts into a blaze, correct?
It would be correct, but the smoke would be going up and through the chimney. Up through the chase.
Well, you understand that this wasn't 100% complete construction, correct?
I do.
And so high likelihood there maybe were some cracks or some seams, correct?
Yes.
And so smoke could have escaped from those, correct?
Supposedly there was OSB, which is 1/2 inch thick, 5/8 inch thick, and it's porous, but it's stuck together. It's chipped wood and stuff held together by glue.
Well, we're asked questions about there being 2 able-bodied persons in the residence, correct?
Yes.
And that this was the time of day was about 3:30 in the afternoon, correct? Maybe a little before.
Yeah, 3:30 I think was the fire call.
Fair. And you would agree with me then that if a person that is not necessarily a factor for the cause of the fire, but is something that should be considered by a fire investigator. The idea that there are 2 able-bodied persons in the home and the time of day. Correct?
Yes. Any of those people told you that, and Ms. Stermer was the only one who said she saw this fire in that location. So that would be the only person. But the first call at 3:30 or 3:31, the guy said the fire's coming out behind the chimney.
Well, but what I'm trying to get at here, sir, is if this is a chimney fire is a slow starting fire, correct?
Correct.
And there's going to be smoke, correct?
And smoke and heat rise, yes.
You would expect then an able-bodied person in the home, especially during the daylight hours, to notice that, correct?
You're
Objection is foundation?
Yes.
Okay, response?
I think as a fire expert and investigating all these fires he's talked about, I think he can opinion on this.
okay. Well, I guess I can give an explanation like a hot air balloon. It goes up because there's heat in the balloon to go up. Heat and smoke rise. There had a fireplace, or I had a fire in that chimney, which obviously is emitting smoke also, and that heat and smoke is going to rise. So unless those people were outside, they were only going to see it coming through the chimney flue, or what they thought was a chimney flue. It wouldn't be coming into the house.
But as the fire debris begins to fall down with inside the chimney chase, they're going to notice it then, wouldn't they?
Chimney chase is still enclosed as far as the fireplace hearth is all enclosed. So there's going to be no indication of that until the fire breaks through that wall. And I'm saying, based on our hypotheses between us, where it started is where it's going to be the most damage is going to go up from there. But that location is going to be where that wall is breached and other things are coming down at the same time that's being breached.
There's actually a sound that's associated with chimney fires. Isn't that correct?
Crackling sound of fire, they got a fire in the fireplace. There could be a sound, there's going to be a sound, but whether you detect it or not, I don't know.
Now, one thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to circle back, I guess, to your video. I keep finding different avenues as I ask questions. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Your video, the first one of the storage unit,
Yes.
that fire, you would agree with me, doesn't spread to the surrounding boxes for about 2.5 minutes, correct?
That's probably, yeah, about right. I mean, we both would watch the time and know for sure, but yeah, somewhere in that general time, it was not that quick and it wasn't that slow.
Were you actually inside the building?
Yes.
Okay, was that you filming?
No, my son was filming with another firefighter. These both were Detroit firefighters. They're both retired chiefs now. I'm getting old.
Fair. So what I'm getting to is, you could have escaped that fire if you had to, correct?
Yes.
And would have escaped without injury, correct?
Yes, unless I would have stayed where you saw the film kind of being jingling around. That's when the heat was too hot for those guys who even had fire gear on.
But of course, for that to have happened, you would have had to have sat there and watched this fire overtake you in the matter of 3 minutes or so. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you were able-bodied, you should be getting out.
And you were asked questions about gasoline in the area of origin, correct?
Yes.
And we know Todd Stermer had gasoline on his sweatpants, correct?
We know there was analysis from the chemist that said it was 85 to 95% evaporated gas.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think the chemist ever said that about the sweatpants. Fair. But again, you indicated there was, let's just go this way. There was gasoline on sweatpants, correct?
There was residue of vapors of gasoline. When you say gasoline, I think of liquid, but there was no liquid on his
Fair.
pants.
You don't know how much gasoline was ever on those sweatpants, correct?
No,
So when you say it, when you throw 2 ounces on a pair of cutoff sweatpants on a video, you have no idea. That has no way bearing comparison on how much gasoline was on Mr. Stermer's sweatpants, correct?
Jury instruction, it was never intended to demonstrate that. He knows that.
I think that could be misleading, so I'll have you go on.
Fair. Let's talk about the sweatpants you have as an exemplar and the ones in the video. Those are those the same sweatpants you have there that were bought, that were on that video?
yes.
Where
We
were they
bought,
purchased?
we bought 3 pair and I preserved one, the gray one we burned. That was gray, I think, too. And the reason they were cut off is I did probably 20 other different kinds of demonstrations with them that we didn't admit.
And those are not the same sweatpants that are that were on Mr. Stermer, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is misleading. We have a jury instruction, and he knows that.
I think this is perfectly relevant, Your Honor.
It's fine for him to reiterate.
They're not the same.
They're not. They're not the same manufacturer, correct?
I don't know. No, they can't be. Well, I shouldn't say they can't be. One was made in Vietnam and the other one was made in China. These were made in China. Stermers were made in Vietnam.
And you can't tell us they're the same thickness, correct?
I guess we could compare them.
No, I'm asking you, as part of
Oh,
your
as part- right
experiment,
now-
you didn't verify they're the same thickness, correct?
Well, I didn't have possession and never did have possession. I looked at the things with Mr. Zerzine.
But you had an opportunity to examine those sweatpants, correct?
I was able to examine them and the attorney would not let me do one thing I wanted to do because she's saying it changed
Objection.
the evidence. Well,
Talking hearsay, so I'll have you stop.
I'm the one that's,
Pardon?
I'm the one that was there doing it.
Okay, thank you, but I'll have you stop here.
Okay,
now.
all right.
Oh,
Thank you. You can't verify that they're the same weave, correct?
I can't.
And as a matter of fact, when it comes to polyester materials, there are actually different chemical makeups of polyester, correct?
The word poly probably says it.
So when it comes to 100%
yes,
polyester,
God.
some may be different. One pair of 100% polyester sweatpants may be different from a different pair of 100% polyester sweatpants, correct?
Yes, yes,
And as far as affecting how things burn, you conducted that test out in the open, correct?
correct.
They were not on a human analog such as commonly used are pigs,
Nope,
and they were open to the air, correct?
they were.
And there was a breeze blowing actually that day, correct?
There was.
You can, and that also feeds into a fire, correct?
Usually, yes.
So the level of oxygen is important here, correct?
I don't think there was a deficiency of oxygen where Mr. Stermer was and or in this fire. So I
There
don't see the
wasn't
difference.
wind.
But the oxygen is present.
He was inside.
Renew the objection. He's talking about now differences in ventilation versus this versus the test. It wasn't to recreate anything. It was to illustrate principles. These days now we're getting into trying to compare circumstances.
I get your point, but I think it's relevant to the purpose that we stated to this jury as for the offering of the polyester, so I'm going to allow it.
Thank you. And again, these were
Shouldn't allow
out in the
them to be in
open,
the
correct?
first place.
Yes,
They were not on a person, correct?
correct.
And you would agree with me that if they're on a person, that could affect the level of oxygen that they're exposed to, correct?
Yeah, they're being exposed to more oxygen interior and exterior. You're correct.
And as a matter of fact, that completely discounts any human interaction with the pants, correct?
Correct.
Because a human, if, for instance, lit on fire, might try to put that out with their hands, correct?
That would not be a bad idea. Yeah,
So, matter of
correct.
fact, I guess what I'm trying to get at is your experiment, we'll call it, was done under the most ideal of conditions, correct?
No, I don't see it that way.
But it didn't take into account multiple variables that you needed to consider in this case, correct?
No,
You talked about Mr. Matheny's clothes, correct? You remember that?
yes,
And transference, correct?
yes.
And you were present for the testimony of Troy Ernst?
I think I was, I've heard it. I would think I was on video too. I mean, video, YouTube at the same time.
And you indicate, and you heard him testify that on the shirt of Mr. Matheny is where the lighter elements of gasoline were present, correct?
If the lighter elements of gasoline were present, I think you're misspeaking, but I can tell you then he would have the most. The gasoline would be most on his shirt.
Well, no, okay. You're not a chemist, correct?
Nope.
You're not a forensic scientist in the aspect of chemical analysis, correct?
No, but I understand lighter and medium and heavy. And when you say lighter, that has more gasoline still residue left than the other way around. I think you just misspoke, but that's okay.
All right, fair enough. What I'm trying to get at is you heard him say that it was more likely that the gasoline was transferred from the sweatpants, socks, and underwear of Todd Stermer to the shirt than vice versa.
I
correct?
did hear that, yes.
Please. Break now. I'll have you report back to the jury room at 1:15, and please remember not to discuss the case with anyone, no social media, no research or investigation or media.
let's wait a minute, see if there are anything from the attorneys.
Counsel, the jury's left. Any matters to address in our break?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Anything, Mr. Mueller or Mr. Kelly? Okay, we'll be in recess.
Back at 1:15. I'm taking a break today because I didn't eat lunch yesterday and I was starving by dinner. So I will see you guys back at 1:15 and we will continue with this dumpster fire of an expert witness. Bye, guys.